All right, let's jump right in. The paper today is DreamDojo, a generalist robot world model from large-scale human videos. This is from Shenyuan Go, William Liang, Kaiyun Zhang, and the rest of the team. If you just take one thing away from our discussion, let it be this. They are basically proposing a huge shift from simulating physics with code to hallucinating physics from video.
Exactly.
They've built this world model that's not trained on expensive robot data, but on, just open domain human videos.
Right. Think YouTube, TikTok, anything.
By watching us humans interact with the world, the model learns the physics of everything. Rigid objects, deformable stuff like cloth, even fluids. It creates this dream simulation.
A kind of video-based environment.
Where a robot can learn and plan tasks before it ever tries them in the real world. We're seeing visual proof of robots setting tables, folding laundry, even creasing paper. All of it learned from a model that just watched videos.
It's basically the matrix for robots. Instead of coding in the laws of physics, you have a neural net that just predicts how pixels are going to change when you poke them.
And because the data set is so massive, all that human video data, it generalizes in ways that traditional simulators like MuJoCo just can't. They're too clean, too sterile.
Not even close.
Okay, so let's back up a little and really contextualize the problem here. If you're an ML engineer working in robotics, you know the pain. It's the data bottleneck.
That is putting it mildly. It's a data drought. I mean, in NLP, we had the common crawl. We could just scrape the entire internet.
Right. Computer vision had ImageNet. But for robotics, you need action outcome data. You need to know if I do this, the world does that.
Exactly. And that's hard to get.
And historically, we've really only had two ways to get it.
Right. So method one, teleoperation. You strap on a VR headset, you grab a joystick, and you basically puppet the robot around.
Which gives you amazing, high-quality, ground truth data.
It does. But it is agonizingly slow. I mean, you can't scale that to millions of tasks. You'd have to hire millions of people. It's just not feasible.
And method two is, of course, the classic simulator.
Simulation. Yeah. You build a world in Unity or MuJoCo. You have to code in the friction, the mass, all the physics properties.
It's great for reinforcement learning. You can run it at 10,000 times real-time speed.
Sure. But it suffers from the sim-to-real gap. The real world is just messy. Light bounces in weird ways. Cloth has these complex wrinkles.
A simulator is always a simplified approximation.
Always. And policies trained in that clean sim often fail completely when you deploy them on physical hardware because, the real world doesn't match the math.
So DreamDojo tries to bypass both of those. It says, look, we don't need robot data and we don't need hand-coded physics. We have human videos.
Exactly. We have petabytes of it. Every cooking tutorial, every DIY video, every unboxing video on YouTube.
Yeah.
That is all data about how the world responds to manipulation. And DreamDojo uses this to build a world model.
So let's define world model properly, specifically for our listeners, because that term gets thrown around a lot in model-based RL.
Sure. So formally, a world model is a learned simulator. It's a function that predicts the next state, st+1, given the current state, st, and an action, at.
But in a traditional simulator, state is just a vector of numbers, right? Joint angles, object coordinate.
Right. But in DreamDojo, the state is the visual observation. It's the whole video frame.
So the model is literally predicting the next video frame based on some proposed robot action.
Precisely. It's treating video generation as a physics engine. So if the robot imagines moving its gripper to the left, the model generates a video frame of the object sliding to the left. If that generation is accurate, it means the model actually understands the physics of sliding and friction and collision.
Now, this leans super heavily on generative AI, specifically diffusion models. But here's the catch, and I want to get into the architecture here. Diffusion is slow.
Yeah.
If I'm a robot trying to plan a path, I have to imagine thousands of possible futures to pick the best one. Standard diffusion can take seconds just to generate one image.
You've hit on the core engineering challenge. If you use a standard latent diffusion model with, say, 50 denoising steps, your robot is just going to be paralyzed while it thinks. It's totally useless for something like model predictive control.
So how does DreamDojo get around that? What's the trick to meeting that real-time requirement?
They use a technique called distribution matching distillation. The idea is to basically distill the knowledge of a complex multi-step diffusion model into a much faster one-step generator.
So instead of iteratively denoising an image, it just jumps straight from noise to the final predicted frame.
Basically, yeah. It turns the whole generation process into a single feed-forward pass. This cuts the inference time by orders of magnitude. It lets the robot dream multiple future sequences of video frames almost instantly.
It can roll out a full trajectory, like if I move here, then here, then here, what does the world look like?
And if that video shows the object falling off the table, the robot knows, okay, that's a bad plan.
Which is where the name DreamDojo comes from. The robot is training or planning inside this accelerated dream.
Correct. And because it's a dojo, it's a safe place to fail. You can knock over the milk in the dream 1,000 times and never make a mess in the actual lab.
Okay, let's get to the capabilities, because the paper makes some really bold claims about being a generalist model. Usually a physics engine is good at one thing. Rigid bodies, fine. Fluids, terrible.
Deformable objects, a complete nightmare.
Exactly.
But that's the beauty of learning from video. The model doesn't care if it's rigid or deformable, it's just predicting pixel flow.
Oh.
And the first task that really shows this off is the laundry manipulation.
Right, they have those images of the bimanual robot handling a bright orange shirt and a green cloth.
Deformable object manipulation is. It's like the holy grail of difficult robotics problems. The state space of a rigid block is just 6 degrees of freedom. Position, orientation.
Easy enough.
A shirt. It has basically infinite degrees of freedom. It can fold, wrinkle, stretch, drape in a million different ways.
And if you try to simulate that in a traditional engine, you're calculating meshes, vertices, stiffness constraints.
And it almost always looks like the shirt is made of, like rubber or stiff cardboard. But DreamDojo isn't solving partial differential equations for cloth dynamics. It's predicting the visual outcome because it has seen thousands of humans hang up shirts.
It just knows that if you hold the shoulder, gravity pulls the sleeve down.
It captures that draping behavior implicitly from the data.
There's another one in that category that I found maybe even more impressive technically, the paper creasing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a really subtle but critical distinction in physics. Elasticity versus plasticity.
Unpack that for us.
Okay, so most simulators default to elasticity. If you bend an object and let go, it snaps back to its original shape, like a rubber ball.
Right.
But paper, when you crease paper, you're causing plastic deformation. You are permanently changing the state of the material itself. The fibers are breaking and realigning.
And the model actually captures that.
It does. In the visual examples, you see the robot press down on a piece of paper, and the generated video shows the paper staying folded with a sharp crease. For a video model to predict that the object does not bounce back requires a really sophisticated understanding of material properties.
Yeah.
It has to recognize this is paper, and paper holds a crease.
That's just wild. It's learning material science from pixels.
Or at least the visual signature of material science. It just knows that white flat sheet plus pressure equals bent sheet.
Okay, so moving from deformable to rigid objects, they have this shelving task. A robot is sliding a notebook into a really tight shelf slot.
This is a great test of collision boundaries in geometry. In a bad hallucination, and we've all seen glitchy AI video objects just clip through each other, the book might just pass through the side of the shelf like a ghost.
Which would be totally catastrophic for a robot that's relying on that prediction to plan its moves.
Exactly. If your robot thinks it can walk through walls, it's going to break itself or something else very quickly.
Yeah.
But DreamDojo seems to capture the hard constraints of rigid bodies. If the book is misaligned in the dream, it hits the edge of the cubby and stops. The model predicts the collision.
Which tells the planner, hey, that path is blocked, try a slightly different angle. And then there's the semantic aspect, the table setting task. We see plates, apples, napkins.
And this is where it goes beyond just physics and into, well, logic. A traditional physics engine can tell you how an apple falls. It can't tell you where an apple belongs.
Gravity doesn't care if the apple is on the floor or on the plate.
But we do. Humans do. And because the model is trained on human videos, it learns human priors. It learns that apples are usually placed on plates. Napkins are placed next to plates. This isn't coded in anywhere. It's just a learned distribution.
The model has just seen that configuration so many times that it becomes a low-energy, high-probability outcome.
Precisely. The energy landscape of the model effectively has a minimum where the table is set correctly, just because that's what it saw in the training data over and over again.
So it's a physics engine that also kind of understands social norms, or at least the, feng shui of setting a table.
It connects the how, the dynamics, with the what, the semantics.
I want to pivot to a major technical hurdle here. The embodiment gap. We keep saying it learns from human videos, but the agent at test time is a robot. A human hand is soft, 5-fingered, agile. The gripper in the pictures is a standard mechanical two-finger claw. How does it bridge that gap?
This is usually where these video-to-robot approaches just fall apart. The domain shift is just too large. But DreamDojo seems to handle this through conditioning.
Explain that mechanism.
You think of it like in-painting for video. The model has already learned the general dynamics of the world, the physics of an onion, the friction of a book. So when the robot is planning, the model is conditioned on the visual presence of its own gripper.
I see.
It's essentially asking the model, given the physics you already know from all those human videos, reconstruct this scene, but with a robot gripper performing the action instead of a hand.
So it's transferring the object dynamics, but just swapping out the actuator's avatar.
Yes. The core hypothesis is that the physics of the world are invariant to who or what is acting on it. If I push a cup, or a robot pushes a cup, the cup slides the same way. The friction coefficient between the cup and the table doesn't change. DreamDojo leverages that invariance.
It learns the world dynamics from us and then applies the control dynamics to itself.
You got it.
So the generalist claim, it seems to hold water then.
It's one of the strongest arguments for it I've seen. Instead of training 5 different specialized models, one for cloth, one for rigid bodies, one for fluids, you train one massive video model on everything. It just democratizes the physics.
Let's talk about edge cases and robustness. The paper shows off a cleaning task. The robot is wiping a table, but it's not an empty table. There are ketchup bottles, mustard, spice jars all over the place.
This is a really tough, contact-rich manipulation task. Wiping is tricky. You need to apply enough force to the surface to actually clean it, but not so much force that you knock over all the obstacles.
And visually, what even is cleaning? It's just a texture change, right?
In the video domain, yes. A crumb or a stain is just a pattern of pixels. Cleaning means predicting that the passage of the cloth transforms those pixels into the background texture of the table. And the model seems to predict that correctly. The crumbs vanish after the wipe.
But the real challenge has to be the obstacles.
Right. If the robot moves recklessly, that ketchup bottle should fall over. The world model needs to predict that instability. If the dream shows the bottle tipping over, the planner can identify that as a high-cost state and avoid it.
So it forces the robot to navigate carefully around the clutter.
It implies the model has a very fine-grained understanding of collision and stability, even for objects it hasn't seen in that exact arrangement before.
And this idea of robustness extends to the environment itself. They mention the distribution of environment categories in the paper.
This is so crucial. If you train a robot in a single lab with, say, blue tables and fluorescent lights, it just overfits to that environment.
You move it to a room with a wooden table and warm lighting, and suddenly it fails. It doesn't even recognize the objects anymore.
But YouTube has every lighting condition imaginable.
Right.
By training on these massive, large-scale human videos, the model sees kitchens, workshops, living rooms, labs. It sees daytime, nighttime, harsh shadows, soft light. It forces the model to decouple the object's dynamics from all that background noise.
It learns that a cup is a cup and behaves like a cup, whether it's on a granite countertop or a wooden workbench.
The visual noise of the internet basically becomes a regularizer. It makes the clean lab environment where the robot operates seem easy by comparison.
So we've got a model that simulates physics, handles deformables, understands semantic placement, and it runs in real time. Is this the end of sim to real? Are we just moving to video to real?
I think we're seeing a massive convergence. For decades, we tried to code the world. We tried to write out the equations for everything. DreamDojo is a proof of concept that we can just watch the world and learn the equations implicitly.
A shift from explicit programming to a kind of data-driven physical intuition.
It solves the scalability problem. We can't code the physics for every single object in existence. We can't write a script for how a specific brand of toaster opens, but you can probably find a video of it.
And if the robot can watch that video and build a little mini world model of that specific toaster, it can figure out how to manipulate it.
It's like downloading human muscle memory into silicon. That's really the takeaway here. We are digitizing physical interaction.
But there have to be limitations. What's it missing?
Of course. The biggest one, I think, is that video is purely visual. It completely lacks haptic feedback. You can see a heavy box and a light box, and they might look identical. In a video, you might infer weight by how a human struggles to lift it. But if the robot encounters a new object that looks heavy, but is actually light, like a hollow prop rock from a movie set, The visual world model might predict the wrong dynamics.
It might predict the robot needs to use a massive amount of force to lift it, and then the robot just flings the styrofoam rock across the room.
Exactly. Vision is a proxy for physics. It's not physics itself. There are unobservable variables, density, mass distribution, internal friction, that pixels alone can't fully capture. The next step is probably integrating tactile sensors into this kind of world model, closing the loop between what it sees and what it feels.
Still, the trajectory seems clear. The days of handcrafting reward functions and friction coefficients, they feel numbered.
We are definitely moving toward a foundational model for robotics. Just like GPT-4 is a foundation model for text, DreamDojo is a glimpse at what a foundation model for physical interaction could look like.
A foundation model that dreams of electric sheep and actually knows how to shear them because it watched a video of a farmer doing it.
And it knows not to drop the shears on its own foot.
That's DreamDojo, a generalist world model that turns YouTube into a training ground for the next generation of robots. It's a fascinating paper, and if these results hold up and scale, it really changes how we think about robot learning.
I think it's a pivotal moment. The gap between watching and doing is closing, and it's closing fast.
One last thought, though. If these robots are learning world models from our videos, they aren't just inheriting our physics, they're inheriting our biases, our specific, culturally ingrained ways of doing tasks. What happens when a robot encounters a task done differently, in a way that just wasn't in its video training data?
That's a deep question. The model only knows the world it has seen.
We'll have to leave it there. Thanks for breaking down the research with us.
My pleasure. Always fun.